Rep the South Side whenever you pay with your White Sox debit card from Wintrust Community Banks and score perks like free ATMs, no monthly fees, and a $300 opening bonus. Pay with pride every time with Wintrust, Chicago's bank.
Hey everybody, it's 𝗪𝗏. Welcome back. It's the White Sox podcast, brought to you as always by our great friends at Wintrust, Chicago's bank. Show your team pride with the White Sox debit card. Get yours at wintrust.com/Sox. Member FDIC, EHL lender. Okay, on the podcast today, we are going deep into the weeds with Brian Bannister, director of pitching for the White Sox. Brian's first time ever on the podcast, and we talk about major leagues, minor leagues, etc. We get into Grant Taylor, Noah Schultz, Shane Smith, Hagen Smith, Wickliffe Gonzalez, and under the radar guy like Shane Murphy. Who's Shane Murphy? You're going to find out if you don't know already. The pitch he feels the White Sox are ahead of the curve on. And whatever happened to the knuckleballer? Can we please get a knuckleballer back in the major league, specifically with the White Sox? I wouldn't mind it. I get Brian's thoughts on that and a whole lot more. This is a great conversation with Brian Bannister on the White Sox podcast. Let's do it. All right, joining me on the podcast, it is the White Sox director of pitching, Brian Bannister, and I got to get this right out of the way. Your dad, Floyd Bannister, pitched for the White Sox from 83 to 87, right in the wheelhouse of my childhood, the winning ugly White Sox. So to be speaking with someone, even in connection with Floyd Bannister, means a lot to me. What was it like just growing up with your dad in the majors?
I mean, it was fantastic. We lived southwest of Chicago next to a lot of the other White Sox players. So commuting in every day, I can remember being a little kid. I don't remember if I was in my car seat or not at the time, but I remember looking up, and on the freeway, there was a Floyd Bannister White Sox billboard. And that was kind of my reference point every day on the way to the old 𝗻𝗫𝗃 that I look forward to. So he was doing well. You know, he won 16 games a few times. My childhood memories are also all in Chicago. So to be able to work for this franchise is a dream come true.
So you probably thought every dad had a billboard with their face on it?
You know, it's like baseball cards. It was a big baseball card on the side of the freeway.
Yeah, but I'm actually thinking about this. You probably were around 𝗻𝗫𝗃 Park when 𝗁cie 𝗰𝗶 was playing there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had the kids game every summer. You know, you'll see my favorite photo all time is me, my hands on my knees in my little White Sox uniform with my dad doing the same pose standing behind me. And I was kind of like his little mini-me. So 𝗁cie was out there, Harold Baines, all the guys, and that was my favorite day of the year, playing wiffle ball out on the big league field.
That 83 team was amazing. They won 99 games, and your dad went 13-1 to close the season, if you want to call closing the season. As a person who became a pitcher in the major leagues, how impressed were you with what he was able to do on the mound with the White Sox and just in his entire career?
You know, the 82 season, which was his all-star season, he led the American League in strikeouts with the Mariners. And then coming over to the White Sox, had the hot second half. Carlton Fisk came out to Fenway one time while I was coaching there, and I got to get a picture of them. And it's also one of my favorite pictures, just reminiscing back to that 83 season. And we actually just celebrated Floyd's 70th birthday 2 weeks ago. So it just kind of puts it all in perspective. It means I'm getting old because he's getting a little older, but all the memories are still there. And anybody who was a White Sox fan, when they come across him, can't help but bring up old stories.
Yeah, so when you were a kid, I'm sure you were banking memories, banking information that you received, just living your life, and then you become a major league pitcher. When did you know coaching was something that was going to connect with you?
Just how I relate to people. I naturally have a disposition where I want to see them succeed. That can lead to other people passing me up in a way because I lack the motivation to put myself first, but I love seeing other people succeed. So being around Zack Greinke was really the catalyst for that. Taking somebody who had as much talent as anybody in the world and being able to support him and see him go out and win a Cy Young Award in 2009. I just kind of had this epiphany, like, you know, I'm okay. I barely am scraping by. I made it to the big leagues, but I don't have the talent these guys do. But it's kind of like being given a very fast race car to drive, it's fun to be able to kind of live through their shoes and see them go out and achieve things that they didn't think was possible, and kind of just be that caddy on the golf course, if you will.
So you come to the White Sox, you become the director of pitching. Where are things right now as you see it? Because you're not just in charge of the White Sox pitching staff in the majors. It's up and down the entire organization. And you've got it's a big job to begin with. Where do things stand right now in your eyes?
Coming into a new org, you actually have no idea what it's going to be like behind the scenes. And I've been with two other big market organizations, with the Red Sox and the Giants, and even they did things differently. They had their own structures. They had their own respective investment in analytics, R&D, just general systems. So coming in, you don't know what to expect. You kind of do an audit. You also tend to play it a little slow the first year in any new organization, as you build out connections and just really see how it's run, why decisions were made in the past and how they're currently made. And you really try and attack the lowest hanging fruit. I know for us, people are really open-minded in this organization, and it's a combination of just bringing to the table things you've experienced in other organizations, convincing everyone on the ROI of investing in certain things and spending the money. And then it just takes time to build stuff out and do it the right way. And we really needed to start from scratch on some of the R&D side of things. Migrating all of our data to the cloud. It was being operated on a server up on the suite level. Getting some developers in that had experience with other clubs and bring their unique perspectives. Getting our data right. We had data sources that hadn't been calibrated or cleaned up. So when you're looking at the numbers, you don't even know if what you're looking at are the real numbers, the real analytics, and it's hard to make decisions that way. So I give a lot of credit to Chris, to Josh Barfield, to Jerry. Jerry's been very open-minded. We kind of have overhauled everything. And even though, a lot of teams are far along in this process, it doesn't take much to get to a functional level and then a competitive level with regards to the information you're using to make good decisions off of. And then Chris has done a great job, along with David Keller, getting more investment into the Dominican and Latin America and identifying talent there and taking chances on more arms. A big part of having a successful minor league system and bullpen is getting upside pitchers that seem to come out of nowhere. You look over the Giants, where I just was, and a Camilo Doval or a Randy Rodriguez. Those were guys that were not signed for a lot of money, but they've turned into elite closer setup men. And we need upside surprises like that. So getting that pipeline going, getting those guys in the system. You look at most of the trades we've done over the last 2 years, we did acquire Latin prospects from other teams. And just having that inventory of Latin prospects where we can do the same thing to go out and acquire major league talent on the flip side will be very important as we get closer to this playoff window. And so just what Mike Shirley's done with the amateur draft and the upgrades we've made there, modeling things out, getting the data better, getting more sources involved. You really make decisions off of information, because all the battles nowadays and all the competitive advantage in baseball happen on almost a microscopic level. And if you're not in the weeds with that stuff, you're really lagging the rest of the league. So we've done a lot of good things. You start to see glimpses of it, acquiring hitters that have better zone decisions and make better contact, chase less. And we've had to sacrifice a lot of pitching in order to reinforce that. And we know that. It's hard on Ethan Katz or Matt Wise or myself. And but we all support it because we want this team to be competitive. We want to be thriving in the win-loss column. We want to have a longer competitive window, be in the playoffs, really just give this fan base a team that's exciting to watch, and then ultimately win the most games ever for the White Sox, be in the World Series. That's the end game.
Oh, I love that. Win the most games ever, World Series. You mentioned playoff window in there as well. That gets me excited. And, you see some of your victories. Would Shane Smith be one of your big victories since you've come over here? How'd you guys identify him as a guy and he became almost the guy for this rotation?
Yeah, I mean, it is short term, but he's one of the better Rule 5 picks in recent memory. You rarely get a starter out of the Rule 5. You're lucky if you get a one-inning reliever. And there's examples of those guys over the past decade. but hard to get a true starter, and not only a true starter, but somebody in the upper half of the rotation right out of the chute. So once again, what the R&D department is doing, everybody's involved in player acquisition. Chris is really good at delegating to the group and everybody throwing in their ideas. You're not going to hit on everybody. We all have our misses. But at the same time, if my goal has always been try and hit on 4 out of 5 guys. And to get there, you have to have good information, good data, good modeling, and guys just with a good feel for what the player development staff can embrace and upgrade with individual players. And with Shane Smith, there wasn't a lot of track record. A similar situation to Braden Montgomery, and sometimes where there's not a lot of information, not a lot of track record, there's some injury history. Really, the baseball market, the industry hasn't figured out what a guy actually is and what he's actually capable of. And so if you're willing to kind of wade into that area, take some calculated risks, you have the PD staff that can take these ingredients and turn them into something. We just liked how he had unique movement attributes. He got big extension. His fastball seemed to play well above its individual attributes. And then he came out of the chute in spring training throwing 99 and really pitching like an ace. And then he added the changeup, which balanced out his arsenal, something he didn't have prior. And all of a sudden you had the arsenal of a starter. And then once you're there, guys have to take it to the next level and actually become a polished major league pitcher and feel confident on the mound and be able to do it in front of a large audience. And he's fully embraced that and been really good. So lots of credit to a lot of people on that one. But when you build a good pitching culture, when you're open-minded, you're looking for certain unique attributes in all these pitchers, whether it's an Adrian Hauser, et cetera, you're just going to stumble on guys that other teams aren't creative enough or are overlooking, or some tweak here or there. And you're not going to hit on everybody, but you're just trying to have these nice wins every once in a while.
Is there a pitch or a trend in pitching that you feel like the White Sox are ahead of the curve against most teams?
In San Francisco, we kind of went with the seam effects, which is just using the seams on the baseball to generate additional late movement. So we were very ground ball heavy. That was kind of a market inefficiency. In Boston, we was the high fastballs and the power breaking balls, the Craig Kimbrell, Joe Kelly types. With us, it's just kind of turned out it's probably the changeup. If I had to say something, we've been able to hit on a few changeups with Shane Smith, Davis Martin, and a couple guys that are adding changeups to the repertoire. That it doesn't have to be an elite one, but sometimes it just needs to be a good complement to the rest of their arsenal. If they already spin the ball well, they just need something to balance that out that goes the other direction. And I think our coaching staff has been really creative in that regard, and give a lot of credit to Katz and Wise, and then 𝗦𝗏𝗏 on the minor league side, and Kurt Hassler. They've been doing a great job just introducing new concepts along with the affiliate coaches, and we just iterate through ideas. That's all we can do. You take these young guys, you see what they can do, you give a fixed time frame, the physics of and the logic behind arsenal upgrades, and you go after it, and you see what these guys are capable of.
You mentioned Davis Martin. He's on the injured list with a forearm strain. What can you tell us about his situation and his status and when he might be able to return?
I'll leave that up to medical staff, but James Kruk, sends out regular updates, and I'll let him and Chris talk more about it. But it wasn't like a huge red flag or anything. So just being precautionary and looking forward to having him back on the mound.
All right, that's good. There were some changes made to the roster. One of them, Wickliffe Gonzalez, comes up from AAA to the major leagues. He came over in the 𝗵𝗀 trade. What made you feel like, he is ready for the big stage?
He's always had the stuff. When you watch him pitch, you'll see it. He has very unique attributes with his hips. He has a unique hip structure, and he's very rotational. So when he throws a curveball, it's more sideways than your typical 12-6 or north-south curveball. So really, he's always had the stuff. He has the velo, he has the spin, he has some unique shapes on his pitches, and really just trying to get his lower half repeatable so that he can be in the zone more often. So he's the kind of guy where he'll tend to beat himself as opposed to the hitters always taking advantage of him and get some slug on him. So just getting him in the zone, trusting his stuff, staying consistent, being nasty, but really just keeping it in the box. It will be his key to success.
And you got Jake Palish, an undrafted free agent from 2022, and he's been lights out in Double-A, an ERA of 1. And this is what I love about baseball. Like, he wasn't even ranked among the top 30 prospects. I mean, I know teams have their own prospect rankings, but he was kind of off the radar, and look what he's done. So what has he turned into, and why is he having such great success this year?
Cove, our pitching coach down in Double-A, has done a great job. You see that staff. There's a lot of good players down there, and they feed off each other. They're all talking about different concepts, and they're very open-minded. And I love lefties in general. You can never have too many lefties in your minor league system because give it equivalent righty, equivalent lefty. The lefty is going to go out and give you 6-7 strong innings, and the righty is going to give you 4 or 5. That just seems to be the way it plays out, especially at the same level of stuff. Lefties just always seem to have upside surprises, even up to the big league level as they age. And so, Blake Hickman and Winston and Cove have done a great job with those pitchers, and they've just come out and taken their opportunity and run with it. So it's fun to see, and they've really been shoving. As you go down and watch them, you just keep watching them get outs, and their stuff plays above what you think it is, and they continue to get better and continue to be creative out there.
All right, this portion of the podcast brought to you by Toyota. Let's go places. And Brian, I want to ask you about Noah Schultz. He made his AAA debut, gives up 6 runs, 5 innings, 5 strikeouts. I didn't watch the whole game, but I watched the highlights of it, and you saw the movement and what he's capable of doing. Where is he at in his development, and what did you see from his AAA debut?
Matt 𝗏 was there. He lives a block away in Charlotte, and he's always around the team. So AAA debuts are interesting because it's the first time a lot of pitchers face guys who have played in the big leagues. I know for me, I was a command pitcher, and I remember going to my AAA debut in Ottawa, which doesnm even exist anymore, from a minor league affiliate perspective, and I walked 5 guys just because all of a sudden guys weren't chasing. They were a little more disciplined. So there were little things to clean up. Ultimately, we want to get the way that he moves and his sweeper command back to where it's been in the past. And, I tweeted out, just backing off the cutter usage a little bit to prioritize the sweeper and its command. The tightness of his execution pattern has been a little wider than last year. And so just getting his mechanics in sync with that pitch and then bringing the cutter back into play, just to make sure he's developing on pace. He's young for the age, for the level. And AAA debuts can be all over the place. I've seen good ones. I've seen horrible ones. Long-term doesn't have an impact on whether you're going to be a good big leaguer or not. But a lot of times there's a little baptism on hitters with better zone discipline that have faced better big league pitchers and just give you a little different look than all the younger minor league levels. So there were some things on the tipping side, kind of showing his locations with the catcher that we're going to clean up. But it's just good to get him out there. He had already pitched half a season at Double-A. We didn't want to stall out his growth. We want to keep challenging him. And so we have a very specific plan in place. 𝗏𝗏 is going to be there with frequency, and then I'll be able to pop in and just help with everything. And Scott Aldred, our coach down there, is tremendous. So it's a good environment for him. It's a more challenging ballpark. The hitters are better. He will get used to the ABS, which will be coming to Major League Baseball at some point. So just getting him prepared for the future years and just continuing to challenge him while working on very, very specific goals for his arsenal.
I know it's not your call to make, but I have to ask the question, is the major leagues a possibility for Noah, even if it's out of the bullpen later this season?
It's a little tougher with starters because it's just a case-by-case basis. If they're overwhelming the level, everybody knows my preference. I love giving them a little taste of what the next level looks like. I think it creates motivation for that offseason into spring training where you're not trying to get those butterflies out for the first time, trying to make a roster or on opening day of a season. You already have a little bit of routine. You know where the clubhouse is. You know how to get there. You know where you're going to live. Just all the subtle things that add value to your major league career and allow you to focus less on just what a daily routine looks like and allows you to just focus on getting the best hitters in the world out, which is challenging enough. So that'll be up to Chris Guest, Josh Barfield, Jin Wong. But if he continues to progress, starts dominating Charlotte, I'm always a fan of getting guys up there and getting a taste of what the big leagues is like.
Yeah, that happened with Grant Taylor. Double-A to the major leagues. How impressed are you with him and his arm and what he could do in the major leagues?
He's a fun arm, and he's very advanced for his age as far as his knowledge. He's aware. He's not too much of a tinkerer. That happens in this day and age where everybody grows up with a TrackMan unit at their colleges now, and there's data everywhere, their facilities. So many times they can just be too into the data as opposed to kind of knowing what their strengths are, being able to filter it, and going out and executing. In Houston, he threw a few too many cutters, and Dallas, and just getting back to what he does well, which is elevating that 100+ mile an hour fastball, tunneling it with his big breaking ball that's elite on both the shape and velocity compared to the rest of the league, mixing in the cutter, slider strategically, but not having that be the majority of his mix, so that he's not damaged by righties too much, and really just getting out there and trusting his stuff, getting that experience, and translating it to the big leagues.
When I was talking to him a couple of days ago, he said that the first time he ever threw 100 in a game was spring training this year. It actually surprised me. I just assumed he was already there. How did he get there? How did he increase his velocity?
It's amazing when a major league team steps in the box with that name across the jersey, what it does to your adrenaline level. Guys are notorious for hitting new velo marks as soon as they realize, oh, it's life or death. It's sink or swim out here. So you saw it with Shane Smith, you saw it with Grant Taylor. They have it in them, and sometimes it just takes that catalyst to really reach back and see what your body's capable of. So he was impressive in spring training, and we knew he was in there. As a starter, he was more 95, 96. Little deeper recovery after those outings as far as physically, and he just seemed to thrive every time he threw in short bursts. And he's capable, like you just saw, of throwing very quick, efficient innings and not having as much soreness or recovery afterwards. So just doing what's best for him, just because he really hasn't thrown a ton of innings in college or the minor leagues, and continue to develop him and having him be a really productive big league pitcher for a long time.
Yeah, what was the conversation like? I'm not sure if you were the one that had it with him, but because he was drafted to be a starter, had the injury last year, so he wanted to limit his innings. What was that conversation like, where you said to him, okay, or whoever did, I think it's best for you this year to be in the bullpen, and clearly he's thriving in that situation.
Yeah, Matt Zaleski gave him the news. He tends to do most of those things and is very good at it. He has great relationships with the players. It obviously was Chris Getz' blessing on it all, making the executive decision. I'm a big fan of him. I'm a big fan of his agents, the 𝗵𝗀 agency, and everyone there. So it was a group effort, and we ultimately want what's best for him. We want him to thrive. Every pitcher has unique challenges, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. You can always make the argument that a starter is more valuable than a reliever, but ultimately it's a pitcher-by-pitcher decision, and there's a lot of relievers that can make really, really good money in Major League Baseball, especially if you're an elite closer. And just breaking into the league, for everybody, that process is different, and we're completely open-minded. You've seen a lot of transitions. You've seen Clay Holmes, you've seen Seth Lugo. There's guys that can start in one role and halfway through their career go to another role. So it's never closing the door on anything, but just looking at how many innings he's thrown, his current stuff level, and where it compares to other big leaguers and our current pitching staff, it just felt like from AA, and he proved everything he needed to in AA as a reliever, just giving an opportunity to go out and fail a little bit and figure things out and just take his game to another level.
So Hagen Smith has been shelved with a little elbow injury. Knowing him, I don't know him very well, but knowing what I know about him and speaking with him, I'm sure he wants to get back on the mound like 5 weeks ago. How is he doing, and what kind of arm and competitor is he?
He's fantastic. There's just a dynamic whenever you have a big first-round pick, a top-of-the-draft type pick. I've spoken to Saber Seminar about this concept. It's this tough balance between letting him pitch and letting him showcase what led him to be National Pitcher of the Year, and also identifying what he needs and what his routines are to be a professional, ultimately to be a major league pitcher on a daily basis. It's for the rest of the staff, it's not that you're walking on eggshells, but you don't want to disrupt something that's already going good and force him to do a routine or change things that your personal opinion says he should do when he's already done so many things well in his career in college. And I think what's huge is he's got great resources. You see in the University of Arkansas in the College World Series. I have tremendous respect for Matt Hobbs, their pitching coach. He did great work with Hagen in college. His agents have been tremendous. There's a lab called 𝗬𝗏𝘀 at Kyle Barker in Arkansas. They do unique force place mounds. He's got a great support group behind the scenes there in Arkansas. And we've been able to collaborate with them and do some really fun things. And we also just got this past month Hawkeye at our AA location in Birmingham for the first time. So what we've been able to do is compare what he was doing with all the data and resources they had at University of Arkansas with Hobbs and compare it to the just recently acquired data that we got in Birmingham and see the differences in how he was moving, how he was loading. We've been able to use those force plate mounds and see how he was using his legs differently. He was diving a lot more. He was getting more rotational. He wasn't generating the ground force that he had previously at Arkansas. It was leading to more walks. It was leading to a little more stress on his arm because he wasn't using his body as efficiently, wasn't staying as stacked, both at leg lift and at foot plant. And so we've taken a lot of advantage of this time just to get him right where, he had some trip ups freshman, sophomore year at Arkansas. Hobbs was able to dive into that and explain it to us. And that way, us going forward on the PD side, we can avoid some of those things that might get him out of his routine or tendencies, habits that he has to really just let him go out and be that elite power lefty with elite breaking ball that he is, that's capable of so much swing and miss, so many strikeouts, while just staying in the box more often, walking less, and using his body more efficiently where he isn't putting any additional stress on his arm.
Yeah, how close do you think he is to returning to a mound in AA?
Yeah, 𝗻𝗫 already has him ramping up, and I'm optimistic to seeing him soon. So it's been a good process. I think the fans, the media have seen us strategically pull guys out of competition and use some of the new resources we have. There's no sense in having a guy go out and pitch if it's not being productive or it's not advancing him towards his goal of being a really good big league player on an efficient timeline. So sometimes just having him pitch, which was normally the case throughout the history of baseball, we do have these additional data sources now where we can go and give them a more personalized routine and grab some data, work on them, really customize things for them, put them back into competition better than ever. And so we've already started to leverage that. And Paul 𝗀𝗍, our farm director, has been great at coordinating with us and doing that and setting that up and speaking with the agents and making sure everybody's just on the same page, that we're doing what's best for the player and we're doing it to advance their career and make them better instead of just letting them struggle a little bit, which there's advantages to that too. But we want them to struggle if they're already doing everything the right way, not just struggle for struggle's sake.
Yeah, baseball's come a long way due to technology. It used to be just figure it out.
Yes.
We've come a long way from you just go out there and figure it out. Oh, you didn't figure it out? Okay, you're either hurt or we're demoting you or we're not bringing you back. I see what you guys are doing. You're being very proactive. So I guess this is kind of what happened with Jairo Uriarte. He's on the other side of this, right?
Yep. Yeah, we had a fun process with him. Everybody involved is great. Matt Zaleski, Scott, the guys in Arizona. We have a brand new lab down there with way more features than we used to. So I give credit to Jerry to kind of blessing that transition. We moved the lab out of Chicago. It was in the hallway by the clubhouse. And by doing that, we were actually able to have two labs in Arizona now because we had both pitching and hitting, but it was in one cage. And now we actually have two separate labs side by side. And not only was it an equipment upgrade getting to Kinetrax, but a workflow upgrade as far as the turnaround times. It used to take us months to get data back with the old system, and now we get it back, end of day or next day, which really speeds up our feedback loops. So we're quick to bring guys in there if something's off. And really with Jairo, his arm was late, his arm was getting long. The direction of his arm stroke was getting too much towards first base, where when he went to throw, it was dragging a little bit. Balls were popping up. He's one of the most hypermobile pitchers in baseball, and by hypermobile, just ultra flexible. When you get into the data, he actually has the second most hip-shoulder separation in all of baseball, which is just a nerdy term for he's really flexible between his hips and his spine. And so with that additional range of motion, sometimes you have to rein it in and actually make him a little more compact. So our goal with him, and he's been very diligent about working on it, was to shorten the arm stroke, make it more compact, make it a little bit more directed towards second base as opposed to swinging it behind his body towards first base, so that it had a chance to be on time, synced up, where he could get to his breaking ball and change up more effectively and really take advantage of the natural deception and extension that he has. So he was a great overhaul, and he bought in, and he's been diligent about doing all of his drills and leveraging our resources. And, in the midst of it, it's frustrating for everybody because everybody wants to be out competing and dominating. But if you give a player the resources and they buy in and they see the results, it's really better for everyone involved.
Just a few more questions. Is there a young arm in the minors on the verge of breaking out in your eyes?
We've had some good ones. We've had a lot of lefties surprise the upside. It's fun to see somebody that's, maybe struggle with command all of a sudden have a breakthrough. It's fun to see somebody with the ability to spin the ball or a good secondary pitch all of a sudden starting to be more consistent with that and turn that into more strikeouts. We're really having upside surprises all over the place throughout the system, and it's just the coaches diving in, iterating through ideas. I just give a lot of credit to all the affiliate coaches buying in, and at every level we've had numerous guys have upside surprises. And you want pitching to be linear. You want everybody to be moving up into the right, and it doesn't always work that way. It's kind of like a sine wave. You want it to be trending up into the right where they're getting better, they're getting more productive. And then some guys will be in the system for 2, 3, 4 years and all of a sudden figure it out. And you just keep feeding the right information, iterating through ideas, not be stuck with stuff that doesn't work. And really just, I give credit to the coaches and the coordinators for getting out there and making guys better.
Well, here's one guy who seems to be on the verge of breaking out. I'll give you the name and you can talk about him. Shane Murphy.
Yeah, Murphy's been great.
2022. Yeah. Started in high A through 10 innings. He's been in double A in 49 innings. He's got a 1.29 ERA. He was a Southern League Player of the Week. So tell White Sox fans who he is, what he's all about, and what he can bring.
Yeah, I got the opportunity to watch him up close in Pensacola a few weeks ago, and these guys just, they can pitch, and we're so obsessed with stuff and stuff plus nowadays. But there's guys in the system that just are good pitchers, and you want guys like that because while the industry or the scouts might undervalue it currently, just because we're obsessed with velocity, we're obsessed with stuff plus metrics, things like that. There's guys that just outperform, and they outperform because they have good routines, they execute, they have plus command, they hide the ball, they're very deceptive. There's something funky about them. They can throw any pitch in any count, and I would just put them in that category. And it's really fun to watch. And as a pitching coordinator or director of pitching, there's certain guys when they throw, you just kind of are able to take a deep breath and rest a little bit more that night because your bullpen's not going to get destroyed. You're not going to have to make roster moves. And I put him in that category, and he's just been a pleasure to watch pitch this year and really outperform.
Okay, so here I brought this up to someone the other day, and I'm glad I'm talking with you. And I might sound like a guy from a way, way, way other era, and I'm just too old school. But I was thinking about Charlie Hough, a knuckleball pitcher, and I was thinking about, well, they don't exist anymore. And how they used to just save your entire pitching staff because they could just go and go and go and go. And in today's game, the value of having a knuckleball pitcher, from my perspective, would be immense. So why don't we see kids learning how to throw it? Why is there no knuckleball pitcher anywhere in the world that I can find?
It's a longer development time. And the interesting about it is a lot of guys that end up throwing the knuckleball are conversion guys from something else, whether they were a catcher, whether they were a position player or a different style of pitcher, and then they just messed around with it and realized they had a good one. I had the pleasure of working with Stephen Wright in Boston. He was an all-star as a knuckleballer. Tim Wakefield was around all the time, and just fabulous having him as a mentor and giving me the ins and outs of what it's like to be a knuckleball pitcher. And then my dad pitched around a lot of knuckleball pitchers just because it was more prevalent. But I think in the era of velocity we're in now, teams don't have the patience, and they see it as kind of a gimmicky thing, and they move on too fast. I'm a huge fan of the pitch for all the reasons you described. It brings randomness to an arsenal, and even the best hitters in the world, they don't know what it's going to do. And there's so much velocity that at lower velocities, it's almost below hitting speed. they just struggle to stay back because everything is fast nowadays. It's not something that those pitching machines can replicate very well. So the Stephen Wrights, the Dickies, there's just not a lot of those guys anymore, and not a lot of teams willing to bet one person in the rotation on a knuckleballer. But I'm still a huge fan. I encourage it anytime somebody's willing to try it, just because you never know who's going to have a great one. But it really is an art form, and you have to completely selling out to be a knuckleball pitcher to have success at it.
It used to wreck certain hitters for like a week. They'd face a knuckleballer, and then they'd go into a slump for like a week because they just totally threw off their timing, right?
Yeah. A lot of guys would just sit out as opposed to potentially ruining their timing for an extended period.
I would love to see it come back. I'm a big fan of it. It's great. It was fun to watch. It was like not superhuman, but it just was so like, while the whole world is zigging, these guys just zagged. And when they were on, it was just great television, great spectator stuff to watch. So I would love to see it come back. How were you throwing back when you played?
I was one of the slower throwing pitchers in the league. I was typically 89 to 92. In short bursts, Arizona Fall League and relief, I was known to hit 93, 95, but that was not where I pitched. That was giving it all I got. So I was more on the slower side. I was a cutter guy. So I threw a lot of cutters. And 50% of my arsenal at one point, and 𝗏𝗏 𝗏𝗀 style. So that was kind of who I look towards. If I don't have the velocity, I'll spin it and make it move. And so I pitched around that quite a bit with my cutter.
Okay, and then just your day to day, because this is a new position with the White Sox. There aren't many of. I mean, there are throughout Major League Baseball, but it's. I'm just kind of curious, like. We see all these computers behind you. I'm not sure those are your computers that you're doing your work on, but like, what does your day exist of? How are you just watching every single pitcher that day? And then are you looking at reports and then communicating with certain pitching coaches and players? Like, how does Brian Bannister's workflow actually come to fruition?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in establishing a culture, establishing an internal lingo where we talk about things a certain way, where we understand the concept. So we did a lot early on education and kind of what doesn't work analytically, what does work analytically. But I'm a big believer in enabling the coaches, not being a dictator with, I hand you this and it's paint by numbers. You have to do what I want you to do. I really want coaches to develop as much as the players. It's okay if mistakes are made either on the coaching or player side if we learn from them. And so I want it to be organic. I want it to be natural. I compare developing pitchers to making wine. There's a time element to it. You can try to rush it, but you can't make a good bottle of red, in 3 months. It takes a little bit of time. And so it's really the critical decisions you make along the way. It's knowing why we're making decisions. It's being willing to iterate through ideas, not tinkering for tinkering's sake. So many people endlessly, whether on the coach or player side, think there's something better out there at the end of the rainbow. And really, sometimes it's just being more consistent in what you're already doing well or leveraging that strength more often is the real alpha there. And so I love our pitching coaches. We've personally hired most of them. Matt Zaleski and Kurt Hassler are great on the coordinator side. And I've had great communication with Ethan Katz over the 5 years that I've known him. And so it's letting the coaches do their thing and really just collaborating with them instead of telling them this is what you have to do or being so siloed off that they don't know why they're being told to do certain things. I want them to know the why. I want them to question it. I want them to second guess it because that's how you learn. And then ultimately you really grow when you have to teach others. So if I'm just telling them what they have to do, they don't own it, they don't know it. But if they have to own the concept and then go teach it to the players, they have to know the why behind it, and that's a big part of how I operate and what I believe in. So it'll appear more passive to most people, but I've been around other organizations or heard complaints from coaches in other organizations that they don't know why they're doing something. They don't ever get to talk to anybody else. They're just handed a page with analytics and, hey, make the slider move like this, and we're not going to tell you why, but our computer models say it has to be this. And their only job is to make sure that happens, but they kind of lose the investment in both the process and the player. And they don't feel like they're personally developing or growing. So holistically, I want every part of the process to get better because what you see is no matter where we acquire a player at whatever level, whether it's a big league acquisition, whether it's a minor league free agent signing, whether it's a trade or a Rule 5 acquisition, I want it to be plug and play where I trust that coach at that level enough that he's going to implement the concepts, iterate through good ideas that we believe in, and kind of leverage the White Sox philosophies and make that player better. And ultimately, I think that compounds everywhere. So it's less about me and more about empowering the coaches at every level. And I'm there to advise and offer feedback and kind of be the creative outside the box guy. But ultimately, if they're not able to do it on their own, then I'm failing them.
One last question. You're deep in the weeds. You know everything with the pitching staff up and down the minor leagues. And White Sox fans are seeing the White Sox team here. And the diehards are watching what's going on in the minor leagues and seeing certain pitchers. But, what can you say to White Sox fans to give them hope from a pitching standpoint about what's here and what's coming?
Yeah, objectively, and I've been a big pusher of this, is to be a playoff World Series team and to be a perennial contender for the AL Central. We need to be balanced on both sides. And, I love what Ryan Fuller's doing. I tried my best to help get him here to Chicago and recruit him and, just bringing good talent in and guys with open-minded ideas and are willing to iterate and leverage data. We had to subtract from the pitching side to add to the hitting side. Because ultimately, I believe whether you look at, the Cubs, you look at the Astros, you look at what we did in Boston with the Red Sox, it all started around a position player core. Because hitters compound on each other. When you have every spot in the lineup able to get on base, and then certain spots in the lineup be able to slug, all of a sudden it's powerful. You just want traffic. You want good at bats. You want pitchers throwing a lot of pitches, just grinders out there. For me, the teams that have won all have those attributes, and it starts there. And then, like you've seen, the Shane Smiths, the Adrian Hausers, we find pitching. Pitchers are so malleable nowadays that, yes, there are elite guys that when you get into that World Series type window and that narrow slice, the teams that have gone out and gone over the top usually have to add premier pitching by sacrificing some prospects or spending a little more money when that time comes. Because there's certain things, especially from an experience perspective, that you can't replace. A Gerrit Cole, a Justin Verlander, a 𝗵𝗵 Cueto. You look at the big trades over the years that led to World Series, and you can't replace that type of stuff because it's both a talent and an experience and composure. And so up until that point, you want to be as productive and as efficient with your development. And we're just going to continue to be creative. That's the one thing I can promise to the fan base. We're going to be as creative as possible, which not only lets us go out and acquire more hitting and more bats to fill out this lineup and really be as strong as we can there, but give fans an opportunity to follow and see these upside surprises and know that we're leveraging every resource we have to go out and find pitching so that as payroll grows or as we get more draft picks that are all coming up in a wave together, we'll be able to fill in the gaps because inevitably you can't develop every spot in the field and every spot on the roster. You're going to have gaps. It's going to happen. And so you have to be able to plug and play a little bit. But we're going to fill out as many of those as possible and have upside surprises on the pitching side. So whether that's somebody that we keep long-term or we're able to go out and get bats as a result of it, we're going to continue to do that, and that's how we're going to win. And it's an exciting process. It's why I try to keep the fan base and media looped in because we just had so many guys do well, and we're just going to keep doing it. And that's all we can do every day is try to get the most out of what we have and be as creative as possible.
Okay, well, this has been a great conversation, hearing the wisdom and the knowledge that you bring to the table and how the White Sox are heading in the right direction. We wish we could flip a switch and they got 90 wins. Can't do that, unfortunately. But you guys are on your way. Brian Bannister, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
No, great to be here as always.
Okay, that's a wrap for this edition of the White Sox podcast. Hawk Harrelson, take it away.
All right, Art Chuck, this edition of the White Sox podcast is over.